Well, I'm about ready to bring old Jimmy Hoffa in and do a couple little things for him. He got some new tires for the front. I don't know why they didn't all come yesterday, but the others two, I guess, are on their way. But he's going to get some new rubber. And that thing's got 16s on the front and 16.5s on the back. But I think it probably would have had 16.5s all the way around originally. I don't know. I'm just guessing about that. I don't know why it's got 16s on the front. But anyway, those are pretty good looking tires. And they weren't that much. They weren't that spendy. They were like 110 bucks, I think. $111, something like that. So anyway, that's coming up. And also, I got my rocker arm cover, valve cover gaskets, and so I'm going to be adjusting the valves on old Jimmy Hoffa. And I've got the oil filter. This is what the oil filter looks like. This is a little Fram, a 106 PL. Yeah, that's interesting. That's different. Some of you young guys probably never seen anything like that. You know, they're not all spin-ons. They weren't spin-ons back in those days. Some of them look like a sock. They call them a sock filter. Some of them had a little wire bail on it that folded down, and you'd lift that bail up and then take it and pull it out. And this one's got a big canister down on the bottom end of the engine, and so I'm going to be changing that out. Well, me and Sparky, we're going to get old Jimmy Hoffa in here, and we're going to start swapping out the oil filter and adjust the valves, and I got a water pump coming for it too. Yeah, the water pump squalls every once in a while, so we're going to get that fixed up, because my intention is to drive that rig next summer quite a bit. And it's just a time capsule, you know. I just imagine some old guy making his living with that truck, you know, back in the 70s. And I don't know if he was hauling scrap or engines or what. The bed's pretty beat up, but I just love that it's such a time capsule. I'm gonna keep it like it is. There was something else I meant to mention about these old rigs. But first, I was going to say, you know, I said old Tow Wrecker's pretty knowledgeable about these old trucks from this era. But shh, don't tell him I said that, because his old head is swell up. And it's big enough already. So anyway, another YouTube friend, Military Chevy. He's got a 60, what is it? A 64? He's got the sister to this one. He calls it Agatha Christine. And this one's Jimmy Hoffa. So we're talking about meeting up next summer when the weather gets better, and see if these old rigs will make it. It's I forget how many hours between us drive, but anyway, figured out that the halfway point would be Troutdale, Oregon, and he don't know if his will make it that far, and I don't know if this one will make it that far. But I'm going to put some tires on it, and we'll see how she's running by next summer when the weather gets good. And we might just strike out in both these old rigs and see if we can meet in the middle. That'd really be a fun deal. So I'll let you know how that goes. This is just such an interesting old engine. I know that a lot of people that watch this channel are not interested in anything other than that right over there. But, and I'm going to get back on that probably next week. But sometimes I have to take a break from it. And then it keeps me interested in it. I don't want to get burned out working on it. And I've got other things that I want to do. I have other projects. And a life outside of YouTube. I have to take a break from that. Sometimes I take a break from YouTube. But this old engine is such an interesting thing. Look at that. Look at the housing, that thermostat housing. It's just sitting up there by itself, and that's just weird looking. And look at that water pump housing. It's just massive. Actually, the water pump is not that big. I thought at first that this was a water pump, but like it would be on a Chevrolet, but that's just the housing. This is actually the water pump right in here. It unbolts right here behind that pulley. I'll take that fan and pulley off, and then that just pops out of this housing. So the water pump itself is not that big, and I have one on the way. I found one for pretty reasonable. And this fuel pump is the interesting thing on here too. I've replaced it, and it's got a big old long crooked stinger that goes way down in there to drive that fuel pump. And look at the intake on this thing. It's just tiny. It only goes from here to here. See, that intake is almost square, and it's only 9 inches long. But yeah, I'm gonna clean those valve covers up, I think. So I better get busy. Quit talking about it. Well, now that just looks a little better, doesn't it? Crawl over there and get that guy back on. We'd be in business. Well, I had to run this thing for a half an hour with cardboard in front of the radiator to get it up to operating temperature. Finally got thermostat to open at 180, but it just doesn't, it's just warm. But there's this back screw down here, this far back one on the bottom on this passenger side bank is that screw is really interesting, and I'm really starting to wonder how I'm going to get that back in there. Okay, I got the valves adjusted. 12 on the intake, 18 on the exhaust, I believe is what it was. I found a couple that were a little bit tight, but most of them were pretty good. And I have had pretty good luck finding parts for my old rigs at rockauto.com. They don't have everything that I need all the time, but they really have a lot of stuff, and it's always been reasonably priced. So I shop there quite a bit. When I first looked up the valve cover gaskets just on Google, the first price that came up was $16 and something, and I go, well, that's not too bad, you know, for good gaskets. So but I went to Rock Auto just to check, and there were these good Felpro rubber gaskets for $8 and something. And there may have been a little bit of shipping on that. I don't know. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. But I thought that was not a bad deal for some pretty good gaskets. So if you don't know about them, check them out. Rock Auto. They do a pretty good job. Okay, given that that back bolt on the passenger side bank is kind of tough to get to, I'm using an old trick that my pappy taught me, or I learned watching him anyway. And he did it. He talked to me about it. He showed it to me. He taught me so much, or tried to. But I saw him do this with the oil pan on an old 216 Chevy. When he was putting it back on, those old cork gaskets were just horrible and never fit exactly right. I mean, they would, but they were usually kind of warped when you take them out of the box or whatever. So he'd always take a little piece of thread and tie the gasket to the pan, and that's what I'm doing here. And then you can go ahead and slip the bolts in and just leave the thread there. So that's just an old hillbilly trick that I learned when I was a wee tot. But I'm pretty near grown now. Boy, ain't that pretty. Well, I just got back from town. Old Jimmy Hoffa here, he runs out real nice. And The engine's fairly quiet, and they got the new tires put on, sporting these new rubber. It's kind of dark in here, you can't see, but they're pretty nice. And the back ones are supposed to be here later today. UPS is, according to what they're telling me, they're on the truck, so I'm looking for them, and I'm trying to get this thing all roadworthy so I can drive it to Troutdale, Oregon. We'll see how that goes. Not right away.